Hi, Captain Peter Cutsey, South Korea, and this is my briefing room. We are on the threshold of runway 15 in Salzburg, Austria. We're going to take off using the HUD, heads-up display, which is part of the training you'll receive in your command upgrade. We'll get airborne and come back quickly and execute an RMP X-ray approach to runway 15. The object of the lesson is an introduction to HUD, and then we will focus on LNAV, VNAV, and the appropriate setup. If you look at the left-hand corner of this screen, you'll see our nav display. Our planned route is an immediate left turn and to proceed to a waypoint, Whiskey Sierra 814. Here it is here, and then we'll proceed to Whiskey Sierra 815, 816, and 817. The minimum we are using today is 2660. We are flying the charted approach. And the RVR is set at 5,000 meters. That's what we're viewing now out the window of our simulator. If you notice, the aircraft position is here, and we have a tracking, real-time tracking during any lesson that we give you. High terrain in this area, that's why we've selected this airport. It's a single runway airport also. So let's go back to the other screen and let's get started. One thing I want to point out before we start is we have VSD, and most carriers have vertical situation display. The importance of understanding the position of the runway on terrain. This airport is 1,411 feet above sea level, which is reflected here on the scale. And if you notice, the runway symbol is sitting on the terrain. This is important to note throughout the entire approach. And when you're flying a non-precision or a precision approach, the runway should be on the terrain. If it's not, you've got a problem. It could be an incorrect altimeter setting. So I wanted to point that out before we go. It's not, the VSD is not reflected on the pop-up, but it is on the main screen. That's why I'm showing it to you now before we start. Part of the command upgrade course is the use of heads-up display and the understanding. I have done several videos in my library. If you subscribe to my library, you'll see them. In any case, we are ready to go, and we'll use the HUD for the first part of this presentation. We got airborne, we're in the left turn, as you can see on the heads-up display and also on the primary flight display and also on the nav display. And we have a radio altitude indication, and we are pitched up right now at 15 degrees. We're following the command bars, but we're also following the cue. The cue is here, and it's in the flight path vector. And this long column is indicating that it's a speed error tape, but as I mentioned in many of my videos, it's also a speed differential tape, meaning indicating our speed is an error on the low side. Well, if you look at the actual bug setting, we're in VNAV speed, and the bug is above around 230 knots. Our actual speed is 168, and that's what that column is indicating, the difference between. So it's not necessarily a speed error. And I want you to observe as we accelerate and clean up uh, how the column will actually minimize itself to zero once we're on our speed as commanded. I brought my heading bug around to commensurate our next track. If you notice, the column is minimizing as we are approaching the speed, VNAV speed, and we're almost right on speed, and the column is almost zero on the HUD. So that is good. We're climbing to 6,000 feet on an altimeter setting of 1020. I'm going to freeze the simulator and point out some of the important aspects of heads-up display and the understanding of heads-up display. If you notice the aircraft symbol on the heads-up display, look at it on the primary flight display. So on the primary flight display, it's positioned right now at 10 degrees of pitch. Well, on the HUD, it's 10 degrees of pitch. If you notice the flight path vector and associated few are below. So that's something your brain has to get used to, is you are flying a flight path angle, a flight path angle. Remember, the angle of attack, which is indicating up here on the PFD of 3 degrees, and over here on the HUD of 3 degrees, the angle of attack is the difference between your flight path angle and your pitch angle. Well, your pitch angle is 10, and your flight path angle looks like it's close to 7. So the difference between 7 and 10 is 3. There it is here. Wow. This is your angle of attack. And in most cases in flight, it will be close to the 3 o'clock position. The thing about HUD is when you're taking your training, HUD is all in one color. Your brain has to accept that. And if you're at all unsure of the understanding, then quickly look at the PFD. It's giving the same information, but it's an information that you're used to. It's all in color. So part of this upgrade training brings you back to your initial flight training with respect to heads-up display. We want to bring the command speed back now to flaps up speed. I brought the airspeed bug back to the flaps up speed because this is a very short flight. We're just leveling off at 6,000 feet, as you can see. And on the PFD, primary flight display, VNAV path, and FMC speed. So we're monitoring all of that as we're leveling off, and this is what aviation is all about, looking at information. Right now, I'm by myself on the flight deck, but we have 2 people, a pilot flying and a pilot monitoring. And probably the most important position on the flight deck is the pilot monitoring. And as you convince yourself as a new captain, as you're taking this upgrade course, remember your team. And remember when you sat as a first officer, learning from a captain, that you do things together. And as pilot flying and pilot monitoring your team. And any changes on the FMA have to be noticed, called out according to your company SOPs. Most airlines follow the same recommendations from the aircraft manager. Boeing, wonderful company. They make beautiful airplanes and they have wonderful procedures. And most airlines don't change those procedures. They use Boeing's procedures as their SOPs. And I've been a Boeing fan and pilot for 50 years. Follow what Boeing say. They're right. And follow your company SOPs. Of course. All right. So we're going to set up quickly for the approach, for this R&P approach. Sharing the screen with you and having a look at the legs page. We need a glide path on the legs page. There it is there, and the minimum is 2660 or 2659 within 1 foot of 2660. So we can use this particular approach in this airplane. We can fly a VNAV path. So once we configure for landing, the last item is to set the missed approach altitude, which is 6,000 feet. Well, that's fine, and that's what we'll do. The aircraft should continue on a 3-degree glide path to 2660, and we'll point that out later. So we've configured the flaps 5 at this particular point, and flaps 5 speed set, as you can see on the primary flight display. One thing I want to point out to you is the flight path angle in level flight is 0. And this is reflected here on the HUD. This is the Q, and this is the flight path symbol. If you notice, our pitch is very close to, let's say, 5 degrees on the HUD. If we have a boo over here, it's the same on the PFD. So when you are using heads-up display, especially when you are training as far as learning to be confident in the symbology, you should have your cross-check should speed up so that you're comparing with the primary flight display while you're in training, so you can get confidence. And if you're at all unsure of the symbology, go back to your PFD. That's home plate, and that's how your training should be actually executed. Remember, what I'm giving you is prep. This is not officially training. It's a preparation for your training. But let me tell you, it's accurate. All right. So understanding HUD and symbology, and especially up here, the angle of attack, so important, and so important that you know what it is. It's the difference between your flight path angle and your pitch angle. In level flight, your pitch angle, whatever it happens to be, is your angle of attack. Here we are in level flight, and here we are pitched up at 4.5 degrees. Well, look at your angle of attack, 4.5 degrees. So in level flight, your angle of attack is your pitch angle. Important to understand. And look over here on the PFD, and you can see it at 4.5. So understanding angle of attack is probably one of the most poorly understood by most aviators. So if you have a flight path vector symbology on your PFD, you should be using it. All right, I frozen the simulator, and we've just come back to the PFD. I didn't have it selected. So I brought it in now so you can look at it on the pop-up. So here it is here. So and here it is here on the HUD. All right. So they're both giving you the same information as we mentioned before. All right. I'm going to proceed now with this RNP approach. So we're in VNAV path. The altitude is set at 6,000. We've been cleared for the RNP approach. And so we're going to go ahead and fly it. So we can actually set, there's a top of descent here on screen. Frozen the simulator, we set the next altitude, which is part of the procedure, and 4,000 feet is the altitude that we want before we proceed to WS 816. Here we are here on the chart. So 4,000 feet and Whiskey Sierra 816 is final approach fix where we'll actually start down. So we are going to step down in phases, just bit by bit. You could follow your company SOPs, but we will select the minimum of 2660 rounded up to 2700 on the MCP at the appropriate time at 2 nautical miles prior to top of descent. So we are dynamic. We have a deceleration and top of descent as indicated on the nav display. We're in VNAV path, very important, and LNAV, FMC speed. We've just changed the scale a little to give us a better look at the nav display. If you notice on the nav display and on the HUD, we've got the glide path reference and FMC speed. We're in VNAV path. And we will start down at the top of descent. So we should notice a beginning of descent. There is the nav performance scales, and they're all indicating that everything is the way we want it, and descent is starting on schedule the way we have planned it. I'll freeze the sim. And we're following the cue here on the flight path vector, which will take us to our altitude and our heading. Our nav performance scales are correct for the pitch and for the roll. Schedule descent the master caution, and as per company SOPs, we both agreed that it can be canceled without getting the book out. So that's part of the SOPs. I've frozen the simulator, and if you notice, we're out of 5,200 feet on track over here, vertical path and lateral path, and on the nav performance scales. So everything is working the way we want it. Having a look over here, there's our 2 nautical mile ring around the final approach fix where we'll complete 8 items as we've discussed before. All right, we'll unfreeze the sim and let's continue. So 5 for 4,000. All right, what we did was we froze the simulator because I'm by myself here and brought the heading bug in around to the track of 153. I have the ILS tune just to give you confidence in the actual accuracy of LNAV, and but we're not going to be arming a localizer, of course. This is just to cross-check the real data, raw data, which is part of our command course, and the real data. So we're looking good on the nav performance scales. We're looking good for our track, and we're coming up to a top of descent point here to our final approach fix very shortly. Let's freeze the sim. All right. So everything looks good. And remember when we looked at the chart, 4,000 feet should be the altitude as we go by the final fix. So we're in VNAV path and looking good. And very shortly, as we come up to the 2 nautical mile point, we'll go up and we'll actually set 2,700 on the MCP. Because I'm by myself as PM and PF, I'm going to go ahead and set the minimum of 2,700 now. Which I did. All right. And remember, as we come up to the 2 nautical mile point, we have 8 items to do. One was set the MDA. We've done that. You should really do that one first so that you don't end up leveling off for whatever reason. And ensure that you're still in VNAV path. That's important. That's the second of the 8 items. So first, set MDA, VNAV path, and RMP, AMP, we've checked it. RMP, AMP is well within limits. So those are the first 3. I like to think of in threes. And the next will be gear down, flaps 15, speed brakes armed, and open the window, set flaps 15 speed. And then once we start down, landing flap and VREF, in this case 30+5, and then set the missed approach altitude, which is 6,000 feet. So we'll cut it loose and we'll try to get all this done as we are in position. Now, if you notice, the HUD, I don't have a means in the sim software here to change to A3 mode, etc. But in any case, we've got the picture and the HUD is working beautifully. And again, in your mind, here's the horizon line. There's our actual pitch. There's our actual pitch. And have a look at it over on the PFD. It's 2.5 degrees. It's 2.5 degrees of pitch on the pitch scale. This, all right. So the flight path angle will be actually 3 degrees once we go by the final fix. And remember that the flight path angle right now is here. We can see it on the PFD and we can see it here. All right, that's our flight path angle. And it's very close to 3 degrees. All right. And so these are all the things that you're monitoring and in the understanding of flying an airplane, especially in this command prep training. So gear down, flaps 15, and speed brakes armed. And we're coming up to the final descent, final approach fix, and we are configured, and we'll set our speed to flaps 15 speed. So we'll select landing flap, and now go up and set the speed. All right, flaps 30, we have 30 plus 5 is set. The missed approach altitude set, landing check is complete. So here we are with the simulator frozen, and we are on the nav performance scales. We're at 1740 on the radio altimeter, and we're in a descent and looking good on the HUD, and the picture on the primary flight display is a match, and that's important. All right, we are on the loose, on the move, and the picture we have on the primary flight display is exactly what we're looking for. Picture on the nav display, also rated descent is good. Radio altimeter is good for where we are. No corrections on the baro altimeter because the temperature is such that we don't have to make corrections. The HUD is giving us a good picture of what we are expecting, and we are coming up to minimums. All right, so you follow your company SOPs on the calls. In some cases, it's approaching minimum, and then minimum continue, or minimum runway in sight, whatever. So let's freeze the simulator here at minimum. All right. This is how you execute an RNAV approach, the way I demonstrated. And this is the type of prep training I'll give you if you join me and the pilots around the world in getting ready for the course you're about to take, whether it be ab initio, whether it be transition, conversion, or upgrade. I'll give it to you in a professional way. And trust me, you'll do fine when you go to your real simulator. I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon in the future.